Okay, now we get to the last story, which is The Dead, which is the biggest story in this short story collection. It's more of, I don't know, maybe you can pass as a novella. I'm not sure. But let's get into it. So this story is like super famous, like super highly regarded, and it's like the most popular here, I'd say, and it's what makes James Joyce popular. It's one of the things that makes James Joyce popular, and we'll get into it. So the summary to this elaborate story is that there's this guy, Gabe, who goes to a party, and he has a wife named Greta, and after the party, they head home. Gabe tries to set the mood for sex, but Greta starts talking about a former lover, which she never brought up until this point. She starts talking about this former lover from childhood, and like in detail, and Gabe, like the mood for sex kind of like goes away, and Greta falls asleep, and Gabe is just stuck there alone with his thoughts, and he's contemplative. Now we're gonna start from the beginning. It's January 6th. Gabriel Conroy goes into this party with Greta Conroy, and it's some annual dance by Mrs. Morkan. There's a girl named Lily. There's also Miss Kate and Miss Julia. They are sisters, and their eldest sister, Ellen, is deceased. Ellen was actually Gabriel's mother. So Miss Kate and Miss Julia, who are sisters of Ellen, highly regard Gabe. Like they cherish Gabe because of this connection. The party starts off with Gabe having an awkward conversation with a girl named Lily. Gabe tries to make like innocent fun talk with Lily. He tries to like conversate like a friendly guy, like harmless topic kind of thing. We're at a party, we're just chatting. Gabe asks Lily if Lily's still in school. Lily says she's done, and then Gabe says, "Oh then," said Gabriel gaily, "I suppose we'll be going to your wedding one of these fine days with your young man, eh?" And then Lily goes, "The man that is now is only all palaver and what they can get out of you, with great bitterness." And the vibe of the conversation dies there, and he tries to salvage it, play it cool by giving her a coin, and their interaction ends there, but that negativity of it stays with Gabe for a bit. He was still discomposed by the girl's bitter and sudden retort. And then Gabe swings from this negative interaction to negative thoughts about this speech that he's planning to recite at this social gathering. He worries that he'll come off like a smartass and that he's just flexing his education, his superior education, for he feared they would be above the heads of his hearers. They would think that he was airing his superior education. So far this tells me two things about Gabe. Number one, he is an intellectual guy. Like he indulges in big brain content like poetry. He's capable of analyzing this stuff, and he likes it. He genuinely enjoys it. Big brain stuff. Number two, he's also like compassionate and self-aware. Like he cares about how he's perceived by other people. He cares about how he's making people feel, whether he's making them comfortable or uncomfortable. Like he gauges these things in social interaction. He's not just trying to talk about what he wants or fulfilling his social desires. He's someone who wants others to feel good around him. I can't help but like him for that. And maybe he's portrayed like a smartass. Maybe he's portrayed like a smartass, like a fucking angel. Like, oh, Gabe is this like intellectual guy, and he's better than everybody, and everybody's dumb and not self-aware as him. Maybe that gives a vibe to some people, but I can't help but like him. And then there's this line: "Greta tells me you're not going to take a cab back to Monkstown tonight." And there's a footnote here that talks about Monkstown, that Gabriel and Greta are able to live in this pleasant, fairly fashionable place to the south of the city, suggests a certain social achievement which sets them apart from the other guests at the party. Him living in Monkstown makes a statement that he stands out from these people in like socially, like in terms of status and how well they're doing. And then a bit later, he gets stuck in this conversation with Aunt Julia, Aunt Kate, and Greta, talking about gollishes, which are these things, like small talk and overfixation on something so seemingly mundane and trivial. And Gabe comes off like a mix of confused and annoyed. Like, it's just gollishes. It's so mundane. Like, why are we talking about this? Like they're at this reunion. It's hard to like reunite people because of busy lives. And out of all the things you can talk about with this precious and rare time that you have with each other, you decide to talk about something so trivial and uninteresting. And he's stuck in this conversation. Gabriel knitted his brows and said, as if he were slightly angered, "It's nothing very wonderful, but Greta thinks it's very funny because she says the word reminds her of Christy minstrels." Then Aunt Kate changes the subject, and the topic diverts to Lily. And Gabriel, he's genuinely curious about how Lily's doing and like what's going on with her life. and it'd be nice to talk about it for him and finally have a conversation that's favorable for him going on. But the subject gets changed right before he could like initiate that. There's that Lily. I'm sure I don't know what has come over her lately. She's not the girl she was at all. Gabriel was about to ask his aunt some questions on this point, but she broke off suddenly to gaze after her sister. And I want to say a bit more about Gabe here. This is when I got the impression that he is perceived as responsible and reliable. It's such a relief, said Aunt Kate to Mrs. Conroy, that Gabriel is here. I always feel easier in my mind when he's here. Now there are two characters at this point that I should introduce. There is Mr. Brown. He's this guy who tries to stand out. He comes off instead like he's bragging. Like, it's like he's trying way too hard to insert himself into the conversation and get people's attention. It's like that guy, like you're at a party, and it's like, he's like that guy at a party, and that you hear from like far away, and you hear this guy bragging about like an accomplishment that he had, but the accomplishment is like, he got 1 million views on like a TikTok lip singing video, and he's bragging about it, and he's a grown man. He comes off like that guy. Like, it's not a bad thing. He can just be annoying, and he just craves attention, you know? I'm the man for the ladies, said Mr. Brown, pursing his lips until his mustache bristled, and smiling in all his wrinkles. You know, Miss Morgan, the reason they are so fond of me is... He did not finish the sentence. Well, you see, I'm like the famous Mrs. Cassidy, who is reported to have said... Yeah, I'm not going to read the rest of this passage. Yeah, again, he's a good guy. He's just annoying at times, you know? Now, the second character is Freddie Malins, who has his demons with alcohol dependency. And at the third paragraph of the story, I feel like it says a lot about him. Besides, they were dreadfully afraid that Freddie Malins might turn up screwed, and when he was like that, it was sometimes very hard to manage him. Freddie Malins always came late. This says a lot. Like, it sets a tone for what Freddie Malins is like. He's not the most responsible, and in the social circle, he's someone who you have to approach with patience, compassion, understanding, and kind of like babysit and take care of. Because he's not the best at taking care of himself, and he's also not the most self-aware or responsible. So he tells Gabe a story in like an overly enthusiastic tone, but the story is only entertaining for Freddie, and Freddie's basically talking to himself. And then Freddie spots Mr. Brown across the room and walks over to him tipsily and repeats the story. He's not so bad, is he? Said Aunt Kate to Gabriel. Gabriel's brows were dark, but he raised them quickly and answered, Oh no, hardly noticeable. You know, Gabe keeping it civil, you know. And his poor mother made him take the pledge on New Year's Eve. Remember that it's January 6th in the story. Also, poor mother. And Aunt Kate subtly passes on this responsibility to Mr. Brown, frowning and shaking her forefinger in warning to and fro. And Mr. Brown is like, all right, dude, let's get you some lemonade, buddy. So then Gabe starts listening to a girl named Mary Jane play the piano, and let's hear his thoughts on her performance. He liked music, but the piece she was playing had no melody for him, and he doubted whether it had any melody for the other listeners, though they had begged Mary Jane to play something. And then Gabe and some others start looking at a picture of Ellen, Gabe's deceased mother, and we learn that Gabe has a brother named Constantine. And there's a footnote here that says, for Ellen to have named her son, also Gabe's brother, Constantine, meant that she had high expectations for him, and that she had high expectations for how he would do in life. And Constantine's actually doing well for himself. And we also learned that Ellen, Gabe's mother, opposed Gabe's marriage with Greta because she kind of dismissed Greta as like a country girl, which I think means like Gabe's mother thought Greta was like dumb or something, or like naive. And then we also learn that it was Greta who nursed Gabe's mother, Ellen, while Ellen was ill. And that's a weird dynamic to have. So then everybody starts dancing, and Gabe gets paired with Miss Ivers, who basically shits on Gabe for writing book reviews for a newspaper that has like political ties to like bad politics. And Gabe cannot say shit because he wanted to say that literature was above politics. But they were friends of many years of standing, and their careers had been parallel, first at the university and then as teachers. He could not risk a grandiose phrase with her. He continued blinking his eyes and trying to smile, and murmured lamely that he saw nothing political in writing reviews of books. Yeah, like it's a party, they're dancing, Miss Ivers comes off as this explosive, opinionated person, and she's down to make a scene anywhere, and Gabe is just trying to play it cool, you know, like it's not the right place for this. And they were also close in the past, so it's like best to tread lightly, because I think opposing the opinion of someone like that leads to like an explosive conversation. And then Miss Ivers switches things up and invites Gabe to the Aran Isles and shits on him when he declines. This guy wants to see France, Belgium, or Germany, and Miss Ivers is like, "And why do you go to France and Belgium," said Miss Ivers, "instead of visiting your own land?" "And haven't you your own language to keep in touch with? Irish?" asked Miss Ivers. Miss Ivers comes off as one of those people who have strong opinions that they impose on others and expect others to have that same opinion, or expect others to like hear them out and be convinced by her. And she's aggressive about it. She keeps pressing Gabe about why he doesn't want to go, and Gabe doesn't answer and tries to cover his irritation. So Gabe's tense from this conversation, let alone everything else that has happened before this, and he vents to Greta about it. Like, "Yeah, Miss Ivers, she wanted me to go on a trip to the west of Ireland, and I said I wouldn't." And Greta, like being supportive and empathetic, says, "Oh, do go, Gabriel," she cried. "I'd love to see Galway again." And they have this interaction. "You can go if you like," said Gabriel coldly. She looked at him for a moment, then turned to Mrs. Malins and said, "There's a nice husband for you, Mrs. Malins." And that's like not the most ideal way to listen to somebody when they're venting to you, to bring somebody else into this private conversation and to like not hear them, instead to make it about yourself and your own desires instead of like hearing them out. So that sucks for Gabe. He probably feels like super alienated at this point because that's his own wife that did that to him. By the way, I do plan to go to Galway sometime. I've only ever visited Dublin for like a few days when I was in Ireland, and I'd love to go to the west of Ireland and see like the Aran Islands, and then go like 2 hours to get like an Airbnb or like a hotel and travel to the cliffs of Moher. Sorry if I'm pronouncing these things wrong, but I'd love to learn a bit of Irish Gaelic as well. Right now, though, I'm teaching myself German, and I'm trying to get to from the B levels to the C levels, study for that exam. And that's like my goal for the near future. But after that, I plan to learn Irish Gaelic for sure. Anyway, back to the story. So, but yeah, it is in my future plans though. Like, it's in the works. It just takes time, but it is like a concrete plan. It's not just like a daydream. Anyway, so after after the dance, after Gabe confides in Greta about his interaction with Miss Ivers, Miss Julia performs a song, and Freddie Malins drunkenly and over enthusiastically praises her for it. And then supper happens, and Gabe helps out a lot with setting up, and he lets everybody get their meals first, even seconds, I think, and then before he gets his, and then he says a speech. And look, about this speech, okay? Gabe is a highly intellectual guy. James Joyce, he's also a highly intellectual guy, and I am not a big brain guy at all. I am a meathead. I am a wannabe literature major. I am a literature major in another life, and I'm way better with analysis in this hypothetical other life, but that is not this life. So I have nothing to say about this speech. It blows over my head, and it's something that I'm going to look into later. So I have no further comment on it. So after the speech, they have a toast after it, and the party slowly dies down after, and people start to leave. At the corner of Wine Tavern Street, they met a cab. He was glad of its rattling noise as it saved them from conversation. I feel like that's relatable. I think if you're an introvert, actually I don't know if you have to be an introvert or not to relate to this quote, but I found that pretty funny and relatable. Back home, after this party, Gabe tries to set the mood for sex with Greta, but Greta starts talking in detail about a former lover, Michael Fury, she had in her childhood. And this boy literally died for her. He had like a disease, and he like forced himself to like see her, and he died because of that. I feel like I'm simplifying this so much because so many things blow over my head, but this is my script, and I'm gonna continue. So yeah, poor fucking Gabe tries to set the mood for sex, and his wife starts talking about a former lover that she never brought up in the past before. And then Greta falls asleep, and Gabe is just there alone with his thoughts. He did not like to say even to himself that her face was no longer beautiful, but he knew that it was no longer the face for which Michael Fury had braved death. Perhaps she had not told him all the story, and that's like a dangerous thing to think, like a dangerous way of thinking. It's like a dilemma where you're both fucked either way, because not knowing all the details of the story is just going to leave you wondering. Like, you're going to keep wondering, and you're going to sit there, and the ignorance is going to haunt your brain. But then, if you do know the details, you have more to like torment yourself over, and you're just going to repeat that over. You have so many details to like repeat in your head over and over whenever you think about this. So again, poor fucking Gabe. Perhaps she had not told him. Yeah, anyway, so, and then there's this quote that I find beautiful, and it's iconic, like it's famous. Better pass boldly into that other world in the full glory of some passion than fade and wither dismally with age. And that is a beautiful fucking quote regarding passion, regarding skills that you're obsessed about. And this is a beautiful story. I think it kind of ends there. To me, it shows how no matter how close we think we are to people, we are ultimately, like, no matter how close we think we are to people, how many years we've spent, how many deep conversations we've had, and moments, like intimate moments we've shared, we are ultimately individuals, and we are alone in some way. Like, there will always be this disconnect to some extent, with everybody that we know. We truly are individuals. Another thing is that the way people impact us, it doesn't matter whether they're alive or dead. That doesn't play much of a factor in how much people impact our lives. Like, for example, this book has fucking impacted me to write a fucking script on it, read it over and over, fucking film this. And James Joyce is a diseased author at this point, and it has impacted me like a lot still. And another thing is that about the story is that it's just simply fun to read a story about a guy who goes to a party or a social gathering, and he's like more self-aware, or like he's taking into account how he's perceived and how he makes others feel, as well as his own desires, and he's trying to be like this compassionate, patient guy, but others are just following their own urges and impulses and their own desires, like talking about whatever they want to talk about, and just stuck in their own like thoughts and urges, while this guy is like trying to genuinely get to know people and genuinely connect. And I think, I don't know how other people live, how other people experience social gatherings and stuff, but I don't think we're able to truly appreciate the dead until we are Gabriel in our own in our social gatherings, or at least like we feel that way. So that's just my personal take. And yeah, this is all I have to say about this story. This is truly a great fucking short story collection, man. And it's awesome that it's just one book out of all of James Joyce's literary works. For example, like the first book I've ever read from him was when I was like 5 years ago, or 21, was Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And that book it shaped like the way I thought about life in my 20s. Like, it was basically, like up to now, it was basically like an affirmation that, hey, it's okay to think hard about life. You're not overthinking. Like, there's a difference between overthinking and being super thoughtful and calculated. And when you're super thoughtful and calculated, and you like to do hard thinking, I feel like it adds, you're so much more deliberate with your time and like what you choose to spend it on, as opposed to just going with the flow. Whatever comes at you, you just go with it, and you kind of just like going any direction life takes you. But like, if you like think hard, and yes, you're prone to overthinking and being anxious, which is just part of it's a challenge that comes with it. It pays off. You're more deliberate, and I feel like any path you take comes with challenges and problems and downsides, and I'd rather be an overthinker. Like, I'd rather have the problem of overthinking than just letting things pass by and not doing anything. I'd rather have the problem of being an overthinker than being someone who just lets things happen to them and doesn't make their own decisions. And then you look back and you're like did those decisions that I make really come from my own judgment, or was it because I was just going with the flow? I do not want that. I'd rather be an overthinker. Like, oh my God, I overanalyze everything. I'd rather have that issue. And I think that's why I like James Joyce. He's so ruthless towards going for the truth and going for what the real desire is, and it's hard to explain. like he's so ruthless with finding the meaning behind actions and trying to like really analyze like why people do like really trying to analyze what the right thing is and having solid reasons for why he does the things he does. Yeah, anyway, this is all my take. I am now going to upload this, and I'm going to dive deeper into these short stories and James Joyce's life in general, and like Dublin culture in during his time, and all these things I need to learn to understand this book further. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching this. I'm sure I'm not the only person that this book has really impacted, maybe in different ways. Yeah, and again, thank you for your time, and thank you for watching.